Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on Rationalise the Denominator. Sometimes we need to simplify fractions that have a surd in the denominator. We do this by multiplying the numerator and denominator by the surd that is contained in the denominator. Let's look at some examples. Simplify each of the following by rationalising the denominator. What that means is that the denominator needs to be a rational number. At the moment it is not rational because it's the square root of 3, and we cannot find an exact value for the square root of 3. So in order to simplify this fraction and make the denominator a rational number, we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3. So we started off with 1 over the square root of 3. That is exactly the same as 1 over the square root of 3 by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So we're actually taking the initial fraction and we're multiplying it by 1. So it doesn't change the value of the fraction. When you multiply the square root of 3 by the square root of 3 together, that gives you 3. And on the top we have 1 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 3. So believe it or not, 1 over the square root of 3 is exactly the same as the square root of 3 over 3. And it's a lot easier now to use the calculator and find an approximate value for this fraction. Whenever the denominator is a rational number, it's much easier to find a good approximation for this value. Let's look at the second one. 3 the square root of 2 over the square root of 5. If we look at the denominator, we have the irrational number, which is the square root of 5. So we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 5. So that was our original fraction, and we're multiplying by the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. Because the numerator and the denominator are equal, we're actually multiplying by 1, which keeps the value of the original fraction the same. That is absolutely crucial. The square root of 2 by the square root of 5 is the square root of 10. There's really a 1 out here. You can't see it, but it's a 1. So 3 ones are 3. So that gives you 3 the square root of 10. For the denominator we have the square root of 5 by the square root of 5 gives you 5. So 3 the square root of 2 over the square root of 5 is exactly the same as 3 the square root of 10 over 5. And we have made the denominator a rational number. So this video has introduced us to the idea of changing a fraction which has an irrational denominator. We're changing it so the fraction becomes another fraction with a rational denominator. And that's called rationalising the denominator. That is, making the original denominator a rational number. And that's really all it involves.